Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee who provide me this opportunity to present our research work here today. And second, I would like to thank Professor Zaidi and Professor Su who motivate me and give me many insightful comments for my work. And finally, I also would like to thank my supervisor, Professor Chen Jiawei, for her dedication and instruction. Now I would like to start my presentation. Here's my outline of my presentation. We know that the world population is aging rapidly, and by 2050, our world will have more than 2 billion people, who account for 20% of the whole world population. And population aging in Vietnam even faster. In 1989, we have older adult account for 1 in every 14 Vietnamese people. But it will increase fast, and in 2016 will be 1 in 8 and 1 in 4 in 2050. And population aging will cause many challenges. We know that increased double burden of disease, providing more medical and long-term care needs, and more healthcare utilization for more older people will more likely to threaten our healthcare system and also social security. And according to United Nations statistics, about 67% of older people living in a developing country, and half of them don't have any pension. So this will, these countries are more likely to get to the trough of growing old before growing rich. In response to the challenges, the World Health Organization developed an active aging framework which focuses on not only health but also participation and security. In 2012, Professor Zaidi and his research team developed an active aging tool here, and after that it's widely adapted in several Asian countries, including Taiwan. And what about Vietnam? Before this study conducted, Vietnam is one of the world's fastest aging countries, and several important policy and programs have been implemented nationwide. However, we don't have any good tool to capture the current status of active and healthy aging yet. So that's motivated us to conduct this study. And we also think that when we compare Vietnam AI with the other advanced countries, we can learn from the other advanced countries to promote active and healthy aging. And finally, we found there was lack of study report the impact of AI on health-related outcomes. And we conducted this study with 2 research aims. First one, we want to explore the potential benefits of active aging index. And second, to describe the current status of Vietnam active aging index and compare it with other countries. And we conducted this study in 3 phases. We translated the EU AI version into Vietnamese language, and we conducted 1 expert panel with 6 Vietnamese experts. And we also conducted 2 focus groups on 20 older adults in both rural and urban area to acquire their perspective on the tool. And after that, we sent the tool to test and retest, and finally we assess internal consistency and construct validity. And we published this paper in Journal of Aging and Health. So if you are interested in this, please download it. And we conducted the field study in 3 provinces, represent 3 regions, North, Central, and South of Vietnam, on a sample of 1,105 older adults aged 55 or above. And our research instrument, besides the demographic variable, we use active aging index adapted for Vietnam with 21 indicators, and we also include 7 health outcome variables. And in order to achieve the M1, we want to examine the individual active aging index associated with the 7 health-related outcomes. We use a multiple linear regression model and control for potential confounding factor. To describe the current status of Vietnam, we need to calculate both population and individual by AI by calculating 4 domains and the overall AI score. Here's the result of my study. The average age of this study sample is about 66, And more than half of this study sample was female, live in rural area, and 2/3 of them was married. And the monthly income is quite low here, just $94 per month. And here's the distribution of 7 health-related outcomes. About 20% of this study sample rated their health as bad or very bad in the last month. And about half of the study sample was vulnerable or frail, and they perceived their health as worse compared to last year. About 22% report at least one fall in the last 12 months, and quite low proportion of older adults who report lonely at least 3 days per week. And here's the score of life satisfaction and quality of life on this range. It's pretty high here. And this table shows the association between 4 separate domain AI and its overall score with 7 health-related outcomes. In the first domain, employment, we see that older Vietnamese adults who had employment in the last 7 days are more likely to have a better life satisfaction, quality of life, and they was less likely to suffer a fall or felt lonely compared to older adults who didn't have a paycheck. And domain 2, older adults who more active in social activity are also significantly associated with 6 out of 7 health-related outcomes here. And domain 3, older adults who have a more healthy living style and have a better supportive environment, they are also significantly associated with all 7 health-related outcomes. And in overall, older Vietnamese adults who have higher AI score are more likely to have a better life satisfaction, quality of life, perceived health, and they are less likely to be frail or suffer a fall compared to older adults who have lower AI score. And here the current, here's the result of 4 domain AI and 21 indicators. The first domain, employment, about 54% of older Vietnamese adults had a paycheck in the last week. And when age increased, we observe a proportional reduction in employment rate. And in domain 2, social participation, we observe 2 indicators with a very low proportion of older adults who engage in voluntary activity and care to older adults. On the other hand, also pretty high proportion of older adults who care to children and who participated in political activities. Regarding domain 3, about half of this study sample engaged in physical exercise and report no risk of poverty. On the other hand, quite low proportion of older adults who live independently and had a lifelong learning activity in the last month. 3 indicators with a very high proportion of older adults who was able to access to dental health and dental care and report no material deprivation and safer environment. In the last domain, also 2 indicators with a high proportion of older adults who had a positive mental well-being, have a social connectedness weekly. On the other hand, 3 indicators with a low proportion or low score, healthy life year, use of internet monthly, and had a high school degree or above. And in overall, Vietnam had overall AI score of 43.1, men had higher than women. And here's the result of Vietnam compared to 31 other countries. Vietnam ranked first in the employment score. What about other Asian countries we see here? South Korea and China, also a high proportion of older adults who have a paycheck. In Taiwan is higher than the EU average. And here's the data that's a little bit different to Professor Xuan, Professor Zai used in 2014, and here's I use AI from 2018. And in domain 2, social participation, Vietnam also ranked very high, 5th, while Taiwan and South Korea is a low performance in this indicator. And independent, healthy, and secure living, Vietnam got a lowest score together with South Korea and China, and Taiwan is in the middle. And the last domain, capacity and enabling environment for active aging, Vietnam also got a low ranking lowest compared to other Asian countries, and Taiwan is performed pretty well in this domain. In overall, Vietnam ranks second because it has two domains. Social participation and labor force account for 70% of the overall weight. And here the position for other Asian countries. And now I would like to discuss further about the domains and AI score. Our findings show that older Vietnamese adults with higher AI score are more likely to have a better perceived health, life satisfaction and quality of life, and they are less likely to be frail or suffer a fall. And the EU AI project led by Professor Zaidi also found countries with higher AI score are more likely to have a better life satisfaction. And these findings indicate that older adults who participated in labor force and social activity and have a better healthy lifestyle and better enabling environment are more likely to have a better health outcome, life satisfaction and quality of life. In comparison with other countries, Vietnam ranked very high in the first two domains, while it has very low ranking compared in other two domains. So this finding indicates that the Vietnamese older adult was more active in labor force social activity, while they was not as a healthy, independent, secure, and capable of being active as older adults in other countries. And there was some possible explanation behind high ranking in employment rate. We think of because a majority of older adults in Vietnam live in rural area and they still participate in agricultural work. And one more reason is retirement at old age in more developed countries is also common. High ranking on the one hand means something good for Vietnam because older adults still have a job, they still contribute to society, they have income and they have opportunity to go out more often and satisfy their personal and social well-being through working. On the other hand, it is not a good sign if a majority of older Vietnamese adults work because of financial burden and they have no other choice. In the second domain, Vietnam ranked 5th because of two very high ranking indicators, care to children and political participation. About care to children, we think of 4 possible reasons. First one is taking care of our parents, filial piety of Vietnamese children. So while they're still healthy, they're taking care of their grandchildren. And second reason is many young spouses nowadays, they are moving from rural area to the city for better job opportunity. They may leave their children for their parents to taking care of. And the third reason is the total fertility rate of Vietnam is quite stable, around a little bit below a replacement rate of 1.9. And I know that Taiwan, according to World Bank data, is just 1.2. But today, Professor Xu is somewhere he told me that even below just 1. And the last reason may be lack of affordable childcare in Vietnam. According to Hanoi statistics, we have only 36.5% of children less than 5 years old could afford access to the formal childcare. While we can learn from EU countries, they have a very huge 85% of EU children could access to the formal childcare. So these reasons may explain why Vietnam has a higher ranking in this domain, while other EU countries have a lower older adult taking care of children. Political participation, Vietnam also ranked high second here. Previously, Professor Zaidi mentioned that some negative activity like participated in demonstration are also very rare in Vietnam, very low proportion, just below 1%. But when we ask, do you participate in any political meeting like Communist Party, and they answer yes to this question. But some negative activities, no. Because maybe the demonstration or online petition has not been legalized yet in Vietnam. Yeah. And second, we think in Vietnam culture, older adults are highly respected. And we also have the Vietnamese Association of the Elderly, which has more than 8 million older adults members through the nationwide. And this huge organization is organized from the central to village level. This organization may provide enabling environment for older adults who can join, can participate in and contribute to society, including political aspects. And we think that the government, one more thing is the Vietnamese government also endorsed and listened to this organization consultation on several important topics, including the political issues. Although this domain ranked 5th, however, we have only 2.2% of older adults engaged in voluntary activities. So this is very pity for our society that we know that older adults are huge community resource. So we need to create more opportunity for older people to contribute to society, and they also will benefit our society. In the third domain, independent, healthy, and secure living, Vietnam ranked the lowest because of the 3 indicators with low performance, including lifelong learning, independent living, and no risk of poverty. And first, about lifelong learning, since Prime Minister of Vietnam issued a decision to build a learning society, many campaigns have been implemented nationwide. And more than 11,000 community learning centers have been built. However, our findings show only 7% of older adults had lifelong learning activity in the last month. So this finding may indicate that the actual effectiveness of this policy or these campaigns was in question. So we think that Vietnam can learn from other advanced countries who perform better in this indicator. For example, mini classes in Taiwan or University of Third Age in UK or Germany or Poland. So older adults can have an opportunity to go to class and get diploma and fulfill their dream, which they couldn't make it in the past. And independent living here is very high in European country, and I'm very happy that Professor Zaidi think of it and want to remove it from a new indicator for Asian country, because here we also observe very low proportion in Vietnam and other countries. And risk of poverty is this slide sample, about 54% was at risk of poverty, was much higher than other Asian country and EU average. And it is very sad for Vietnamese population that majority of older Vietnamese adults were still working, but their income seems not sufficient. And poverty risks may burden their families and society. And although Vietnam now have 2 categories of social assistance, however, these amounts are too low, and which are not enough to support older adults. And so we think that the Vietnam government need to work hard to increase both amount and the coverage rate for older people in need. In the last domain, Vietnam ranked 26 because of low ranking in life expectancy, healthy life expectancy, use of internet, and educational attainment. First, about life expectancy, although it has been increasing over time, however, it's still lower than other countries in comparison. More importantly, healthy life expectancy accounts for only 40% of the remaining life expectancy. So it means that older Vietnamese adults who live spend more years to live in activity limitation or disability. So these findings imply a high need of medical and long-term care needs among older Vietnamese adults. And this indicator we also see Vietnam ranked 29 out of 32 countries, and very low proportion compared to other countries. And finally, this indicator use of internet was also very low ranking. We think that because of several reasons, this study sample have a low educational level, and high poverty, at risk of poverty may impact them to buy smart device, or they have a very limited purpose of use. And one more reason, we think more advanced countries like Taiwan, South Korea, and Europe country, they have a better socio-economic condition and better IT infrastructure. So these also may explain the variation. However, when we want to improve the quality of life of older adults, we need to provide enabling environment and train older adults be able to make use of internet. We also acknowledge some study limitations. First one is not a national representative study, and second, it was a cross-sectional study design. So we only can generate the hypothesis rather than confirm the causal pathway. And we suggest a future longitudinal study design can confirm this impact of AI on a health-related outcome. And the third one, we need to bear in mind that when we compare Vietnam with other 31 countries, we use different data here and different data sources. So when we interpret the result, we need to take into account. And a final limitation is this is a one-time point survey is not sustainable. If we want to evaluate, if we want to monitor the implementation of aging policies, we need to reconduct it, maybe every 5 to 10 years will be rich data source for policy making. So we suggest the government need to integrate this tool with other aging survey. And in conclusion, our findings show that older adults who participated in multiple aspects of life based on the AAI framework could benefit older adult health outcome, life satisfaction, and quality of life. And second, Vietnam have high ranking in overall AI and the first two domains, while have very low ranking in the last two domains. So which signals something that the Vietnam government as well as the country have we need to increase number of older adults who participated in labor force on social activity as their represent. They're willing to do so, like Professor Yang doing this increased job opportunity for older people. On the other hand, we need to reduce number of older adults who work due to financial burden and who care for children because they have no other choice because of the community don't have enough affordable child care. And finally, well, we need to improve the low score indicators that I have presented previously. So this will end my presentation here. Thank you so much for listening.